The Russian army has broken through to the territory of Velyka Novosilka. An entire company of the Ukrainian armed forces has surrendered. Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of November 24, 2024. A tremendous number of events have occurred, so let's get started. We will begin with the settlement of Dnipro. On the evening of November 22nd, the first satellite images of the Yuzhmash plant were published. These clearly show the damage inflicted by the Russian troops using the Oreshnik missile system. The first image, taken on November 17th, shows the plant before the strike. The second, taken on November 22nd, reveals significant differences. At first glance, it may seem that the plant suffered no damage. However, upon closer inspection, visible holes can be seen in the roofs of individual workshops. It appears that the Oreshnik missile system targeted infrastructure located underground. Today, footage was also released, showing Iskander missile strikes on the Dolhintsi airfield in Aviatorske. The videos depict Ukrainian units attempting to hide a MiG-29 fighter jet. However, reconnaissance operations detected the aircraft, which was destroyed using an Iskander missile. Moving on to the southern Donetsk direction, we see some of the most critical updates. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces have significantly expanded their control zone. They have approached Velyka Novosilka from the southeast and encircled the settlement of Rozdolne. Let's break down the details. The offensive on Velyka Novosilka reportedly began on November 20th, as evidenced by cartographic services. The map from that day shows the initial situation. By November 21st, updates reflected growing advances. On November 21st, the pro-Ukrainian Deep State Service published an analysis highlighting the Russian army's decisive advance toward these two settlements. By November 22nd, further map updates and objective control footage confirmed Russian control southeast of Rozdolna. On November 23rd, additional updates were published, but the most crucial material came today from Ukrainian sources. Footage from Ukraine's 20th Separate Presidential Brigade showed efforts to repel the Russian offensive on Velyka Novosilka. The Russian army deployed a massive number of troops, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers in large columns. Fierce fighting ensued near the settlement. Based on the footage, it is difficult to determine the exact positions where Russian forces were stopped or managed to consolidate. The videos primarily focus on Ukrainian forces repelling the attacks, disabling equipment, and inflicting damage. One segment was geolocated, showing where Russian armored vehicles reached before being damaged by Ukrainian drones. Previously, about 80% of the contested area was marked as disputed on mapping services. As of today, there is no doubt that the Russian army has reduced the distance between its forward positions and Ukrainian forces to approximately 600 meters southeast of Velyka Novosilka. Combat operations, as of late November 23rd, are reportedly taking place in farms near the settlement and possibly in its southeastern sector. Today, reports indicate that Russian assault units have entered the farms in the southeastern part of the village and are currently clearing them. Forces have also reached the eastern outskirts of the settlement and are encircling it from the northeast. It is likely that an assault will commence soon, taking advantage of the current disarray within the opposing ranks. There is a strong impression that the Ukrainian armed forces front east of the Mokry-Yaly River has completely collapsed, and the enemy command has lost control of the situation. The only area where we are currently facing strong resistance is in the western part of the village of Rozdolivka. The enemy is holding on to a strongpoint west of the settlement and putting up fierce resistance. Losing this position would open the path to Novyi Komar, cutting off another route to Velyka Novosilka. Meanwhile, the enemy is putting up stiff resistance west of the river, and overall, they are managing to hold back our offensive actions, despite some localized successes by our assault units. Enemy informational resources are notably pessimistic about this area. Many expect the imminent fall of Velyka Novosilka, which, they believe, could trigger a cascade of other problems in the Huliai-Pol and Kurakhove directions. Let's now discuss what happened in Rozdolny. Reports indicate that Russian units have broken through the defenses and encircled Rozdolny. The Russian armed forces are deploying large amounts of equipment and personnel. However, there has been no objective control footage from this direction in the past 24 hours, only maps from various cartographic services, both pro-Ukrainian and neutral. Based on updates to these maps, Russian units have entered the eastern part of Rozdolne. This is not the work of reconnaissance or sabotage groups. We are now talking about the regular Russian army. It seems highly likely that the battle for Velyka Novosilka has already begun. Now we turn to Kurakhove, where significant information has also emerged. A minor frontline adjustment has been reported toward the settlement of Romanivka, according to cartographic data from multiple services. Additionally, a wealth of analytical information, predominantly from pro-Ukrainian sources, has been published. These analyses are becoming increasingly pessimistic and defeatist. Calls for retreat to preserve personnel are appearing more frequently, with warnings that failing to withdraw from encirclement could lead to a crisis, disaster, or even catastrophe. Russian units are gradually attempting to push Ukrainian forces out of this pocket. Given that the area has already fallen into operational encirclement, escaping is challenging. Russian command appears to be focused on compressing Ukrainian units between Hanivka and Uspenivka. This would increase losses significantly due to strikes from various rocket artillery systems or FABs. Regarding Uspenivka, no updates have been received in the past 24 hours. It seems that active combat has not yet reached this strong point. Returning to Kurakhove, the situation remains critical. Increasingly, reports indicate that Russian forces are already fighting in the central part of the settlement. Pro-Ukrainian sources are issuing more calls for retreat, surrender, or withdrawal to preserve personnel. According to cartographic services, Russian forces now control approximately 10% of Kurakhove's central area. Neutral cartographers have noted minor advances over the past day. Additionally, materials have been published confirming that Ukrainian forces may leave Kurakhove in the coming days. Specifically, footage of the Kurakhove power plant was released. These images show the destruction of the plant's tower, which collapsed entirely before viewers' eyes. Sources of this video report that the Russian army carried out a precision strike using a FAB, resulting in the destruction of one of the mines. However, subsequent analyses from various experts suggested that it was a controlled demolition by the Ukrainian armed forces to prevent this tall structure from falling into Russian hands. The Ukrainians likely feared that the Russian army could use it to install cameras, communication equipment, or other strategic assets. According to Ukrainian reasoning, such an important object should not be captured by Russian command. This implies that the Ukrainian garrison is likely preparing for a retreat, which could begin shortly. Moving north of Kurakhove, reports indicate that the Russian army is completing the clearing of the settlement of Berezka. There is also a small dacha cooperative, likely located in the northwestern part of the area. Information about the clearing of Berezka has been published by both pro-Russian and neutral cartographic services. Ukrainian forces are reportedly also leaving the settlement of Sontsivka. After its abandonment, and as Russian forces occupied positions in the nearby forest, Ukrainian units began launching strikes, possibly using JDAMs or French-made missiles. Ukrainian troops are gradually retreating from this area. An interesting article by General Zaluzhny, the former chief of the General Staff of Ukraine, was published. He stated that by 2027, Russian forces could advance through Ukraine at a pace of 600 to 650 kilometers per month. For now, he believes the front line remains stable, but by 2027, battles could end within 2 to 5 months, potentially as quickly as 2 months. Although the idea of war continuing until 2027 seems unlikely, such discussions are already circulating. Now we turn to the Sedov direction, where Russian units are gradually compressing Ukrainian forces in the village of Pustinka. It appears that this settlement will soon come under complete Russian control, allowing the Russian army to form a solid flank along the water barriers and villages on the Novoleksivka, Yuriyivka, Pustinka, Petrikivka line. This would create a formidable flank from which to further advance, utilizing the operational space to target Nova Yelizaveta, aiming to encircle Pokrovsk from the southwest and sever several railway lines leading to the settlement. It seems that further offensives in this direction are likely, as Sedov offers a convenient launch point for advancing southward. This would enable the encirclement of Ukrainian units stationed in the Zaporizhzhia and southern Donetsk directions. Regarding Pokrovsk itself, the map has not changed significantly. On the Toretsk direction, the situation is similar. Intriguing reports are coming from the Klishchivka bridgehead, where it appears that Russian forces have officially cleared the Siversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal from Toretsk to Chasiv Yar. In the Chasiv Yar direction, assault operations are ongoing, but the focus of artillery and FAB strikes is gradually shifting westward toward Kostiantynivka. Recently, little information has emerged from Chasiv Yar, making it difficult to determine the exact positions of Russian forces. Ukrainian units, according to certain experts, occasionally conduct counterattacks, possibly to influence how maps are updated by various cartographers. Despite map adjustments, the front line continues to slowly advance westward. Current maps may not fully reflect reality, but almost all cartographic services depict a similar situation. It appears that the central citadel of Chasiv Yar is either on the verge of falling or is about to come under Russian control.